Ah. Oh, hello. I didn't hear you come in. I'm just relaxing in my garden. Why don't you come and join me? And while you're here, I can tell you about some of the audio systems that are in place in garden life. Well, first up, I'll talk about the footstep system. Now, as you walk around, footsteps play, okay. As you can see, there are no... well, your player character doesn't actually have feet. So there are no animations you can pop a little notify on to, play a footstep sound as the foot touches the floor. Instead, it is based on distance travelled. Every time, whenever you move, a little counter goes up saying how far you've moved. And once you pass a threshold, the sound plays. Pretty simple. One nice little thing though, is that it also works as you turn on the x-axis. Now if I stand still and turn around, there you go. It won't do anything if you move up and down. But if I were to go left to right... oh, that was a big step, that one. So even when you're just moving, turning left to right. There we go. And, even better, a little modifier is added so that if you turn around while you're walking, you get a funny little quick step action go on. As you scuffle about. Alright, and while we're on the subject of footsteps, of course, as you're on different surfaces, you get different sounds that play. This is pretty simple using a physics material system in Unreal Engine. So you do a little raycast pointing down. It checks what the physics material is on the material or the object underneath you. God, there's some loud insects, aren't they? And then you got some crunchy walking on concrete sound. I say crunchy, I mean chunky. It's turned into a little bit of a thinner sound as you're on the stone. Grass, of course. There's lots of that in this game. Oh, there are lots of weeds here, aren't there? What a mess. We've got some wood. And carpet. Oh, there's not much wood left on the floor here anymore, is there? And then even on these objects such as the stone, can I climb this? I can. Stone. And I wonder what you get if you walk on this. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Lovely. So yeah, that's the footstep system. Alright, hello. This is the Fmod project for Garden Life. And we'll have a look at one of the music tracks that plays in the background when you're in the garden. It's very helpfully named Guitar Demo 1. And if you don't really know what this is that we're looking at, don't worry, I'll go through it. But essentially, when you start the level and you press, you start playing, Fmod is told to play this event. So this playhead will start moving along the timeline, and it'll move back and forwards for different reasons, which helps to not make it just a single track which repeats after a few minutes, but it jumps back to the beginning, or it switches to a different spot, or it loops to create pauses in the music, things like that. And as the playhead goes past things like this, it will trigger this event, which has loads of different musical phrases in it. For example, as we're moving along, this blue thing is a loop region, and if I were to play now, there we go. So there's always a chance, here it's set to 35%, that it will loop. And all of these different loop regions have a chance, down here, that they'll loop. And then we've got these markers here, and what happens with this is when the playhead gets to this green thing here which says to marker A, this one doesn't have a chance, it will definitely jump back to this point. So there's a chance that this thing will play, the playhead will get over here, it won't skip forward to one of these C ones, but it will jump back here, and then it'll play this twice in a row essentially. So what this does is it gives a feeling of a little bit of randomness to the music. It's still the same tune, it's not a proper generative, procedurally generated tune like what you might find in a game like No Man's Sky or something. But if you imagine you've got a mate sitting in the garden playing the guitar, and he's playing the same tune, but you never quite know what he's going to do next. If he's going to move to the chorus kind of section, if he's going to repeat a bit, how exactly is he going to play the part? Is he going to add an extra note, or change up the timing a little bit? That's kind of the feeling I wanted to get with it. So, we've got the different guitar parts here. We've got some organetta and some mandolin that play. Got a spooky track. I'm not actually going to show this off, that's a little bit of a secret. You might discover it if you play. And we've got this bird response here, so if we open this up, I'm going to make sure it's turned up so we can hear it. So here we've got a bird that plays a little ditty, which comes up a few times in the game, in the main theme, and different events and stuff like that. So what I wanted to do here was have some call and response between the music and a bird that sings along with it. So when there's a pause in the music, and we can see that here, you know, the bird, it gets triggered around this point, and by this time, this section has kind of already played its part, so it's a little bit quiet. So that's when this comes in. And then I didn't want the bird to just play, you know, like in the background. I wanted it to be in the world somewhere. So to do that, it's sent via a transceiver to another event which exists in the tree in the garden. And therefore, this bird is triggered at the right time, but its sound comes from the tree in the garden. So it sounds like it's really there and singing along to the background music, which is quite nice. I'll turn that back down because we don't want to hear it in the background with the rest of the music. We only want to hear what is sent, transmitted through this transceiver. So, let's have a little listen. When we start it, you know, the moment you get off the bus when you play the game, you don't know when exactly the music's going to start. It could start after 5 seconds, it could get stuck in this loop. Let's see what happens if we play it now. It didn't get stuck in a loop. Lovely. And there's a bit of a pause, and we don't know if it's going to get stuck in this loop as well. Not very likely, but it might. No, it didn't. So, we hear the B section. We're probably going to hear this little element here. A nice swelling sound. It didn't trigger one of these to C sections, so instead we're going to get stuck in this loop, and then back to A. So we've just played this event twice in a row, essentially. And inside this, there's more randomization. We don't know what kind of little embellishing phrases we might get. Oh wow, again, we haven't gone here, so we're going to go back to this section one more time, it looks like. A nice little delayed electric guitar section there. The swell again. This time we've skipped forward to C. Slight chord change. We'll get stuck in here. Now we've got no choice but to move on to the D section. There's nothing telling us that I might go back to the beginning. And these are all, there are all sorts of different embellishments in here. Ooh, a lovely little delayed sliding electric guitar part. We might have another one. Nope, we got another acoustic guitar chord. A bit of a pause. Or not. You know, even I have no idea what's really going to happen next. And here, we've got a 50% chance that it'll go back to the beginning of the track, or it'll move on to the next section. It went back to the start. And that's fine. I'll show you one more thing. If we have a look at this, the time of day actually triggers some different sounds. Now, if I open up the D section, we've got a track for trumpet or theremin. If we wanted to listen to this, I won't play it in here because it'll come through really distorted with all the different routing that I'm doing. But, so what we've got in here, in the actual trumpet and theremin event, there's a bunch of logic going on with these different command instruments saying, set this helpfully named parameter 0 to trumpet to theremin parameter to 0. When we're over here, set it to 1, the 1 corresponding to the trumpet, 0 corresponding to 0, theremin corresponding to 2. That's just my little system that I've worked out. But we'll only set it to play the trumpet part if the time of day is late enough. So that means when it starts to get late, the trumpet will be triggered. So if we set the time of day late enough and listen to this section again, we'll hear the trumpet come in. It's signalling the end of the day. It sounds a little bit solemn, but it's quite nice, suitable for the evening, I think. Lots of different options for this final phrase, the way it resolves and goes back to the start. Lots of different options of trumpet lines there as well. Tell you what, I'm going to override it, and we'll let this section play us out. Alright, and here we are back in the garden. So, as we can see, the whole gameplay area isn't that big, really. We haven't got a massive, sprawling, open world. We've just got this garden, outside the garden, in the greenhouse, and in the shed. So, I wanted to create a nice little system for as you move between these spaces. Rather than have something simple like a different ambience when you're outside and when you're inside, which triggers as you pass a threshold. That's a pretty classic way of doing it. For example, you would step in, and then over 1 second or so, the outside sound would fade out and the inside sound would fade in. Instead, I wanted it to be a bit more... what's the word? Not quite dynamic. I wanted it to be more reactive to your actual position. So what happens is, if I were to move slowly through here, you can hear one sound fade in and one sound fade out based on your position. I can hear some of the outside sound, I can also hear some of the inside sound now. And the further in I go, the more I hear of the rain on the roof, but I still hear some of the sound outside. And now I only hear the outside sound. But if I'm here, it's a blend of the two. Ooh. Hello. That's a very cozy sound we got in here, I think, when you're in the shed. Oh, hello. Speaking of cozy. Hello. So yeah, the way I did this, a little bit hacky, a little bit janky, but it worked for this project as it's quite a small area and I thought I wanted to squeeze as much as I can out of these things. It's sometimes referred to as portaling, or using portals. Fmod doesn't have this functionality kind of built into it, so I made my own sort of workaround, which could do with a bit more work, but for this is perfect. Essentially, all the ambient sound of the garden is sent to a receiver event which exists on the threshold of this shed. Also to the threshold there on the greenhouse. This means that technically the sound is actually coming from this point here, not from all around you. And a parameter is keeping track of your position, well, your distance between the shed and your player. So as I move closer to it, this distance gets lower, and it fades out the sound of outside, it starts to fade in the sound of inside, and there you have it. It means you can stand right in the middle and hear a little bit of both. You can check this out on the greenhouse as well. God, it's a mess. It's a mess here, isn't it? Here we are. There we are, rattly fans. So when we're in here, we can hear all the rattly fans and stuff coming from all around you, really. It's an enveloping ambient sound. But like this, you can hear it. It's a bit messy. You can hear it coming from the left, which is great, because the sound essentially becomes collapsed down to this point on the threshold as you move through. This is all done by automating the spatializer plugins in Fmod. I'll probably go into this in some more detail once I've cleaned up the system and can use it in different projects, because it's a bit of a mess right now, but for now I think that is quite pleasant. Speaking of portals, a similar thing is done in the village with the music, so let's go and have a look at that next. The same thing happens with the ambience here, and portals and thresholds into buildings, well, buildings into the garden shop. But the music also is affected by this. So right now we've got a lovely jaunty little tune with a drum kit, guitar and piano. What if we were to explore a little bit? Oh, fountain, that's nice. Ooh. Now what is that? I'll tell you what that is. That's a, well, probably won't pronounce it correctly, but it's a chalumeau. Chalumeau. Similar to a clarinet. I'll tell you what, it's almost beckoning me inside. I can hear it coming from the shop. Let's go and see what that's all about. Now the same tune is playing, but it's totally changed. Oh, hello there. And of course the same system works. If I slowly move out, I'll start to hear the original music come in instead. And the clarinet persists. Now just one element of the tune exists. More than the other elements, the bongos and the percussion and stuff. Because it really is saying, I'm over here, this is where the music's coming from. Isn't that lovely? Ooh! The same thing seems to be happening over here. I wonder what could be through this gate. A lovely regal trumpet is inviting me in, but I don't think I'll be able to show you what's in there just now. Oh well. What a lovely summery sound.